Hello everyone, hope you're all doing good today. Today I want to address a question, and the question is, are atheists rejecting God? Now this is an accusation I hear quite a bit. People will say, Christians will say, well, you rejected God for XYZ reasons, or you don't want to believe in God because you rejected him, and things along these lines. And this is something that I think is quite just plainly wrong. And if you follow my logic, it should hopefully make sense. So an atheist is someone that I would define as someone who does not believe in God. The theist is someone who believes in God. An atheist, someone who does not believe in God. So I'm going to give a couple examples and just follow along with me if you can. Picture a little boy. Parents teach him about Santa Claus since the time he's, very little, let's say 2 years old or whatever. And so he grows up his early childhood years believing full-heartedly in Santa Claus. He believes the cookies and milk he puts out at night, Santa consumes when he comes down the chimney, the presents under the tree, some of them are from Santa, and he believes all this stuff. And he gets older, and of course, eventually, truth comes out. His parents tell him, look, where he finds out from his friends, hey, Santa Claus ain't real. The deal with the cookies and the milk, your parents were just eating those presents under the tree. Your parents were just pretending to put them there. You see, this Santa was just a made-up concept, and yada, yada, yada. So the kid, it's hard for him to hear the news, but he's like, wow, I guess, Santa's not real, and oh, what a bummer. Let's say, he's disappointed. And then some of his other friends, though, who are still young and they still believe in Santa, they get really upset with him and like, how dare you reject Santa Claus? How dare you reject Santa Claus? Like, Santa's the best guy. He's giving everyone Christmas presents and all this stuff, and you rejected him. It's like, what? Think of it also, you could think of it like the tooth fairy, for instance. Kid grows up believing in the tooth fairy. Puts his tooth under the pillow every time he loses a tooth. $20 shows up under the pillow. Eventually finds out, hey, everything starts to make sense. When he finds out the tooth fairy doesn't exist, your parents were putting the money under the pillow, it wasn't the tooth fairy. And so he stops believing in the tooth fairy. And then some of his other friends who still believe, because maybe they're younger or whatever, you rejected the tooth fairy. I mean, he's given you money every year. He's been so faithful to you every time you lost a tooth, and you rejected the tooth fairy. It's like, what? You would never use this language in any other, different aspect of not believing in someone. You would never call that a rejection. It just doesn't make any sense. Now, I'm not saying that, oh, well, the tooth fairy and Santa, they're all just as probable as God. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I don't think they're as likely as God's existence, but that's not the point. I'm just trying to illustrate a point that to say a child rejected Santa Claus when he stopped believing, it seems rather silly. I'm not sure, how people would react to that here. They'd just be like, what? So picture this analogy, and this is more analogous to, a little more I should say, to my situation, and I'm sure like many others. Kid grows up, let's give him a name, let's say John, or Johnny Boy. Johnny Boy grows up, and his mom tells him all his life he has the most amazing dad in the world. He's off doing secret service missions or whatever in different countries and all these things and saving people's lives, and he's helping the world be a better place and all this stuff. And all his life, the mom tells Johnny Boy, you can write letters to your dad, you can text him, you can do all these things, you can call him and all this stuff. But his dad never responds. He never gets a text back. He never gets a call back. He never gets a letter. He never gets a visit. Nothing of that. But obviously the kid believes in his dad because he's been told that this dad exists from the time he was born. And this dad is the most morally virtuous person in the world, basically. And so, obviously, Johnny Boy accepts that his dad exists, obviously. And as time goes on, Johnny Boy starts to wonder. He's like, I mean, my mom keeps telling me I have this dad out there, but I never hear about him, like, on the news. I never get anything back from him. I text him, I call him, I write him, and I never get responses. But for some reason, I'm supposed to be doing these things. And the only thing he supposedly had from his dad is a letter that was supposedly written a long time ago, back before he was born, that was to his family and his future kids and all that, and was supposed to be like guidance for them and a love letter in a sense. But when he looks at the letter and he reads it, and there's no way to show that this actually came from his dad. It's just a letter. And he approaches his mom about this, and he's like, Mom, how do we really know Dad's out there? And she's like, well, because we have this letter and things, and obviously, I mean, we know he's out there, and I have a relationship with him, he's my husband and all this stuff. But as the kid keeps digging and searching to find evidence that his dad actually is out there and is alive, he just cannot find anything, and he's starting to get really sad and depressed. He's like, oh my goodness, I don't know that my dad is actually out there. Like, this is awful. And finally, after so much time, he just stops believing that his dad's real because he can't find a good reason. And when he finally comes out to his mom, because she's like, why aren't you texting your dad? Why aren't you writing him letters? Why aren't you, doing things for him to promote, like, maybe his causes or whatever he's standing for and the work he's doing? Like, why aren't you giving to him and supporting your dad? Like, what's going on? Like, what is happening? And he says, look, Mom, I've thought so hard and tried to find good reasons to believe my dad's actually out there. I can't find any evidence, or at least none that's good enough to actually convince me. And the mom gets so disappointed in her, and she's like, I can't believe you're rejecting your father. Like, you rejected him. Like he's done so much. You're like, how could you do this? So my question in the scenario is, did the kid reject his father? Would you say that about him? Now you might say, well, he never really had a relationship with his father. But in my hypothetical, which isn't perfect, whose fault was that? Whose fault was it? I mean, be honest. Really, be honest. Was it the dad's fault or was it the kid's fault they didn't have a relationship with his dad? He called him, he texted him, he wrote letters, he sent him money, he sent him gifts, he sent him presents, he told others about him, he told everyone how unbelievably amazing his father was. He loved his father, he did everything he could for his father. He thought his father was the best thing ever, and he wasn't ashamed of that. So was it his fault that he didn't actually have a relationship with his father? And when he stopped believing that his dad was real, did he reject his father? I just don't think we would use that language. It seems to me that oftentimes when Christians accuse atheists of rejecting God, it's because they're trying to, point out that they did something wrong. Like, they now deserve the punishment that's coming to them because they've rejected God. Like, they're at fault. But that's just not the case. We simply just don't believe that God exists. And that's it. So I can speak for myself. I can't speak for others. But I don't hate God. I didn't rebel against God. I didn't just all of a sudden not want anything to do with God. I simply am just not convinced that he's real. And that's it. I didn't reject him. I didn't turn away from him, because you can't do that to someone who doesn't exist. It just doesn't make sense. So to my answer to the question, are atheists rejecting God? No. Someone rejecting God would be someone who still believes in God and was a Christian, let's say, and just said, you know what, I don't like God anymore. I think he still exists, but forget it. I don't want to serve him. I don't want to do anything he wants. I just want to do my own thing. And so therefore, while I know, yeah, God's still probably up there, he's probably not happy with me right now, but you know what, God, forget it. I'm doing my own thing. That would be much closer to rejecting God. And that's often what Christians accuse atheists of doing, but I mean, I can only speak for myself, but that's definitely not the case.